I'm gonna say a bold statement, but a realization that I keep being led back to time and time again is that everything is happening for us, not to us. And what I mean by that is no matter how painful the experience, uncomfortable the challenge is, in the moment, even if we can't see like how this is helping, where this is taking us, how this is a part of the journey, it is still a part of the journey and it is still taking us somewhere. Everything that we experience is happening for a reason. So if you're in a really uncomfortable, challenging, maybe painful point in life, that is only one chapter. That is not the whole book. It doesn't have to stay that way. And you can choose to use it for you as opposed to against you. I do think there's a difference between us having a really painful, challenging experience and choosing to stay there in it and not leave it, even when there's opportunities being brought to us to leave it. But I think everything does happen in divine time. So even if you are going through a very painful cycle, eventually you will leave that cycle, whether it's by choice or by force. And you'll still be able to take what you experienced and learn things from that and grow through that regardless, and be able to look back and be like, oh, that was a part of the circumstances that was bringing me to becoming this more whole and integral version of myself that I wasn't before. Because I don't think that anything in our realities happens to us unless it's happening for a reason, and the reason is always growth and expansion, even in those really uncomfortable, painful places where we're like, what is the point of this? Is there ever a way out? Even if you can't see it in the moment and you can't feel it, the form is always changing and everything is connected. So where you've been brought down, you're going to be brought back up in the reciprocal way. But you won't be able to recognize that till it happens and you've been brought up and you look back and you're like, oh my God, that was where I was wounded. That was where I was hurt. And this was where I healed. This was where I saved myself. This was where I put my pieces back together, and they reflect each other like a mirror. Hi, I'm Julia. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. So I've been wanting to make this video for like a week or two now, and I'm finally making it. It's gonna be totally off the cuff, but it's basically my experience of realizing how everything is happening for me based off of the really painful experiences that I experienced in like the past 5 years. I mean, we've all experienced painful things throughout our life, including myself, but I'm mostly focusing on my journey from sort of like my mid to late early 20s up until now, where I'm at my late 20s, and I finally am starting to really see the light at the end of the tunnel, because I was going through a really rough time in my mid 20s, and I think in the past year I really started to see that light. Like, it started in 2023, beginning of 2023, maybe end of 2022. Now we are in almost mid 2024, and things are really starting to come to fruition in a way that I wanted for so long, but it just wouldn't happen for me because it wasn't the right time and I didn't go through the lessons I needed to go through to get to where I am now. And this has been like a decade journey, but I feel like things are finally starting to come full circle, and I can still see so many challenges ahead of me because that's just a part of life. Like, we are always going to be going through challenges and growing, because if we're not growing, we're dying. So I accept the challenges of life because that is a part of this, and that is a part of the fun. And at the same time, there are certain challenges that I am ready to leave behind. I am ready to graduate from, and I see myself doing that. So where do I begin? Well, I want to start by saying that one belief that I hold is that everything is connected. This is another thing that I keep being reminded of time and time again, and I feel like I understand it as this: we are all one at our core. We are all the same one source, experiencing itself from different perspectives and point of views. That being said, because of that, everything in this reality, everything in our own personal subjective realities is all connected. And so when you experience things in your life, you can look back at the chain of events that brought you there. Most of the time, these things are subconscious. You might not even consciously realize how connected everything you're experiencing is, and yet it is still all connected without your knowledge of it even being so. So there's this thing called mycelium, and I think it's created by the mushroom plant, if I am correct, and it's basically this underground like vein system, root system that connects all the plants and trees, and well, trees are plants, but you know what I mean, all the life that's growing out of the ground, it all connects them to the water sources and nutrient sources and whatever sources that need to be connected so that they can get the life from underneath the ground and be fed the nutrients they need to be fed. They're all connected to that mycelium source. Just like us humans, we're all connected in certain ways underneath, but you might not be able to see it above the surface. I feel like the mycelium is the perfect analogy of this, because you can't see it when you're just looking at the plants and trees. You see them and you're like, oh, that tree is not connected to that bush because I don't see any connections to the bush. But little do you know, it actually is connected to the bush near it because of the mycelium underneath the ground. And so are we, and so are experiences. So I want to give you a little story time, tea time example from my life, starting from my early 20s up until where I am now. I want to briefly summarize this because it could get really long and involved. But basically, when I was 18, I made a connection with somebody that I completely let go of. Moved to California and experienced the things I needed to experience there. I grew my business to become what I wanted it to be, and I had all these amazing experiences there and with other people. I got to experience a sense of community for the first time that I built with others completely separate from my life in Pennsylvania and my family and this and that, and it was an amazing experience for me. There were challenges, and towards the end I also experienced a sense of burnout with my business because I had grown out of the content that I was doing on YouTube, and just the version of myself, I had sort of grown out of it, but I didn't know where to go from there. So I couldn't pivot and change and this and that. And I ended up going through a lot of financial struggles because I wasn't really posting anymore, and I wasn't taking on brand deals, and I just wasn't bringing the money in. And so because of that, I ended up downsizing my apartment, and then I was living with a few roommates. The apartment got mold, and so I was like, you know what, I'm struggling financially right now. This apartment has mold. Let's just cut the lease here and I'm gonna go home. This was right before COVID. And I want to talk more about this apartment lease situation in my next video because I'm going to be talking about my move and like all of the connections in that. But I want to say I feel like this lease being broken because of the mold was such a blessing in disguise, because I don't know if I was going to be able to pay for that whole rest of the year because I was dwindling my money down so much and I wasn't really working because I just wasn't in like that state of mind at the time, and I felt like I needed a break. So the universe brought me some circumstances with the mold that honestly I really was upset about at the time, but it really did work out in my favor because it was the perfect out of that situation without me having to actually break a lease and pay all the money for the lease break. I ended up getting compensated because of the mold in the first place. So that was one of those circumstances where you can't really see it in the moment, but it is working out for your highest good. The next one was I came home and I reconnected with that person that I had connected with right before I left. That was a full circle moment there. And we ended up getting into a relationship, which at the time I was like, why did I get myself into this? Because it was my most painful relationship that I ever experienced, the most difficult, challenging one. The relationship I experienced before that had its challenges and difficulties, but in a completely different way. And it was in a way where I would say it was a little bit more in my favor versus this one. Although I've come to learn from experiencing both those relationships, because I see myself more as a villain in the first relationship and more as a victim in the second. Although, to be honest, I've played both characters in both relationships. I saw myself as a villain and a victim in both of them. And at the same time, I don't want to be in relationships where there's ever perspectives where either of us feel like villains or victims. So I played out those two kind of like codependent style of relationships. And when I left the second relationship and I looked back at both of them, I was like, oh, as painful as this experience was, I needed to experience both to understand how I want to show up in the world for myself and for others, like what kind of partner I want to be and what pure, true love is. Because that had love in there, but it was mostly codependency being flipped around and played out. So I ended up experiencing a third relationship that was really short-lived. I would consider it more of a rebound. And and that taught me a lot. But after the fact, I felt like, damn, why did I get myself into that? And I think that a lot of times about a lot of things. Like, I thought that about my second relationship for so long. I'm like, why did I put myself in such a situation to feel so shitty for 3 years? And then I realized that I needed to experience that. First, it taught me how to be by myself, because I felt so alone in that connection, and it really made me rethink everything. Like, even after when I had the little rebound relationship, once I was done that, and then I went back to my ex for a little bit and was done that, I dated a little bit, and then I just took a break. I took a break because I was like, I need to be by myself. But when I was in the really painful relationship, I did learn how to do so many different things by myself and not be afraid anymore. And I also kept learning that lesson after that relationship. I learned how to not be afraid to drive all these different places by myself, because that was something that was scary for me. Doing groceries for whatever reason was scary for me. Going to the beach by myself, I never ever did that. And all these things I started doing, and I started learning to love being independent and by myself. I also got to learn through my experience of being by myself that I really do enjoy other people's company, and I got to form a new appreciation for the company of others and for the company of myself. And I think these experiences have gotten me out of the codependency. Like, I don't feel like I need anyone to be around me or be with me for me to be okay, whether it's in a physical way of getting things and doing things, like household stuff, grocery stuff, just stuff to be existing in the world. I don't feel like I need somebody to help me with that anymore, even though it's nice to have the help. And I also feel like that on an emotional, mental level. Like, I don't need somebody to entertain me 24/7. I don't need somebody to make me feel good about myself, although it's nice to have somebody around to do that every so often, because who doesn't like some affection, some attention, some love? I've learned to appreciate that, but I also don't need to take the good with the bad, in the sense of take anyone who appears in my life and all of their flaws just for those good moments of, you're gonna help me with my daily needs, or you're gonna help me with feeling good about myself emotionally. And the ironic thing was, my first relationship really helped me with the daily needs. My second relationship really helped validate my emotions, but neither actually did, because I wasn't whole on my own. So the reflections I got back were these weird reflections of like, I'm helping you with this, but you're also paying me to help you. I'm validating you, but you're also begging for that validation, you know? And so, full circle around the town, I learned that I don't need that anymore through those tough situations. But I don't think that I would have learned that if I didn't go through it. So that leads us back to, those things happened for me so that I could become more whole within myself, for myself. I just saw a red bird. That is a sign. And I can hear the red bird chirping. Y'all hear it? Okay, so coming back to that really painful second relationship, because it was so painful, it really ingrained a lot of lessons in me. Before I had even gotten into the relationship, I was very like out of my own world with my hopes and dreams, career aspirations, all those things. And it made me really susceptible to putting all my energy into a person, which is exactly what happened, putting all my energy into a relationship. I had very little interest in my YouTube anymore and content creating, and it took me a while to come back to this sense of self where I was like, oh, I love business, I love content creation, I love all those types of things. And that's when I ended up starting my swimwear business in 2021. But that relationship really wasn't aligned with my career aspirations, because my ex wasn't into social media. Ironically, and this is what I mean by everything's connected, the only social media he had was a YouTube account just for watching, and a Snapchat for social reasons, obviously. And what are the social media platforms that I have been known for? I've been known for my YouTube, and as of the past year and a half, my Snapchat. That is where all of my energy has been really going into. And so I was still doing my YouTube while I was with him, and I was doing my swimwear business. And from my perspective, maybe he sees it differently. I just didn't feel like he was very supportive of either of those, just based off of certain situations that went down within our relationship. And so it was really hard for me to balance that relationship while also balancing following my dreams, working my swimwear business, posting my YouTube content, and still having some semblance of like civilness with my ex. And it wasn't until 2 months after fully ending that relationship and completely like cutting ties and leaving the space for me to heal that I got the opportunity to join the Snapchat creator program. And I realized if I was still in that relationship with my ex, like he would have never been about me vlogging daily because he was not interested in being in any content. He was even uncomfortable with me filming and posting content where we were just together. Like I had to literally wait till I was not with him to do so, even if he wasn't in it. So that would have made it impossible for me to vlog my life on Snapchat if I was still with him. And so when I got the opportunity to become a Snapchat creator, I took it. I went full force. And the craziest thing, whether I show up on his Discover page or not, I don't know, we don't have each other on Snapchat, is that the places and the experiences where I was brought down is exactly the reciprocal place and experience where I've been brought up. Like the irony of Snapchat being my ex's only social media, and that being the social media that I've been brought the most up on after leaving that relationship, is so wild to me. Like the connection is synchronistic. I don't believe in coincidences. So I say all that to say, I don't know if we like fully plan these lives out before we come into form, but if we do, like in hindsight, looking back, like what really came first, the chicken or the egg? Did I plan this experience to have such a tough relationship to get me to this point where I'm actually following my dreams again and doing what I really wanted to do all over again in a new way, in a different way, with all this wisdom? Or did I know I was always going to be at this point and I needed to plan these experiences out to make a storyline to get me here? I don't know. Whatever you believe, it doesn't really matter. But the way I see it is the lives we're living are interesting stories, just like a Netflix show or something. And you know, maybe when you write the story, you don't know how the ending is going to go. But as you're forming the plot and this and that, there'll be foreshadowing along the way. And I really think these tough experiences are almost like bridge points getting you to where you're meant to be. Like the tough experiences are meant to happen. They're a part of this. I know a lot of people in the law of assumption community, the Neville Goddard community, they call this the bridge of incidents. And I could see that. I feel like that is that. But I also feel like even the good parts are the bridge of incidents. Like it's just this ongoing Netflix series that doesn't end till you die. And it's really cool to see how it's all connected. That's my favorite part, is making the mental connection of, oh my God, I went through all of that so I could be here right now telling you this, experiencing what I'm experiencing now. And the craziest part to me is I've been wanting to move back to LA since the day I left. But I just didn't. I wasn't in the right place. I didn't go through all these experiences that I needed to go through, all of the tough experiences that I went through in the almost 5 years of living here to get me to the point where I was actually ready to move back, like fully, mentally, emotionally, financially, because I wasn't ready 5 years ago, even though I really wanted to be. I still needed to experience all of this. And if you would have told me when I left in 2019 and came back to Philly that I was going to experience all of these things, I would have ran away. I would have been like, no way, I don't want to experience that. But that's a good thing, because I don't think we, from our human perspectives, would ever choose to go through the really tough stuff. But sometimes we have to. Like, we have to go through it to learn what we need to learn to become who we need to be. And the tougher it is, the more accelerated the lesson. And I think the part of us that chooses that is like the soul part of us, the part of us that's more integrated with source. But those lessons are really hard. And when you do learn them, it really does accelerate you. Although it was a tough 3 years in that relationship, and then afterwards, you know, the past year and a half after was still tough cleaning it up, I feel way more whole than I've ever felt before. I feel way more connected to my higher self, to source, than I ever have in my entire life. And I've grown so much in those years. And now I finally feel ready to move back. And the craziest thing that I was about to say before, but it got on a tangent about, it's been a challenge for me to even find a place to move into, but I finally got the call on my ex's birthday about the place that I have now signed a lease and I'm moving into. I got that opportunity on his literal birthday, and that is no coincidence. I don't fully know what it means, but I took it as a sign that everything I had gone through was not in vain. It was teaching me everything I needed to learn to go and experience this next chapter of my life. And I feel like I could keep going on about this and all the different connections, but I'm gonna leave it here, and I'm gonna talk about my move and all of the really cool synchronicities and things that happen leading up to it to bring me to it in my next video. So I will see you in my next video next week. I love you guys so much. Bye.